So recently I did a Desert Island 8 Desert Island plugins, 8 Desert Island hardware units. You can see them in previous videos. But someone commented saying that 8's too many and that they'd rather see, how about you can only take 3 and not the 10k units, but rather in the 3k range. Or let's phrase it differently. If you were starting out today with some but not unlimited budget, which 3 units would you get? I kind of covered this in a previous video where I spoke about the 2 units that I would get, and I always recommend, from a mastering perspective, I always recommend getting the SSL Fusion as one, and that being your first thing. And the reason I say get this is simply because it has everything. Well, not everything, but it has a few little processors in one box, which is great. And the one key thing it has is it has an insert point. Now, the insert point, you might think, oh, well, it's just an insert, but it's not. It's got mid-side. And the reason I say get this is because then what you can do is you can add an EQ or a compressor onto that insert point and use it in mid-side. So I would always recommend number 1 being the SSL Fusion, just for the fact that you are getting mid-side into your mastering chain. And all the other bits that are in the SSL Fusion are really good. Second thing to get would be, I mean, I've got to stick to a 3k budget, so 3k per unit. Under 3k, the second thing I would get obviously would be an EQ. So an EQ under 3k, it's a tricky one because all the EQs that I have are over 3k, bar the Marg and the Kush Clariphonic, but I wouldn't recommend those because they're not going to be, if you're starting out a mastering chain, the problem with those sorts of EQs is they're very particular to one thing. So you can't just use this one EQ as it's not like a nice 4-band EQ that will just kind of EQ everything like a Maselec MEA2 or something like that. But that's a 6k EQ. So we can't put that one in. Now, I'll tell you one that I think I would put in, and I've got it just sitting over there, is the Handcrafted Labs Thermos. And that is 3k. SX Pro in the UK do that exclusively, and I got one to demo, and I had it for a couple of days, and I was just like, this can't go back, because this EQ, and I was quoted on this, I said that the Handcrafted Lab Thermos is a £3,000 EQ that performs as well as my Maselec EQ. You know, it's a ridiculously good EQ. It's a 3k EQ that should be 6k. So I'll put that one in. And also it has mid-side already built into it. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to use that Fusion for the mid-side if you're using this EQ, because it has it already built in, which is a massive plus. It's a really, really good EQ. I did a review on it a long time ago, which I'm going to update, and I'm going to do a new review on it. But it's one of those EQs, it's so lovely. You can push it so hard and it doesn't sound harsh. It doesn't feel like you're pushing it too hard. It's so good. It really, really is a good EQ. So then I guess you're moving next onto a compressor. Compressor for 3k. I mean, there's not many that I would personally be like, yeah, let's get that compressor, because the problem I've got is, like the question asked, was you can't choose the 10k compressors. All the compressors that we use, because compression is such an integral part of mastering, they're the best compressors you can buy. The Unfairchild, the Alpha compressor, you know, these compressors are incredible. The Maselec MEA MLA3 we've got as well, which is multi-band compressor. But they're outside of the 3k limit we are setting in this question. So there's not really any really that you're kind of gonna going to select. I'll tell you what we'd probably go with. Something like... I'd probably go with the Better Maker compressor. I think that's under 3k. I'm pretty sure that's under 3k. And the reason for that is you've got you've got recall on this as well, and the recall on that compressor is really good. I've got the limiter, and I use the limiter a lot in the mastering chain, and the compressor is, well, you know, it's equally as good, and it is a very, very good compressor. And the good thing about it is with the recall, you've got plug-in access with it as well. So using the plug-in, you can control the hardware. So you're getting that analog sound with plug-in control. And it's very, very good. Really, really good software that runs alongside it. Do you know, the problem is that wouldn't necessarily be the compressor that I would advise getting. But I've got a 3k limit. And that's probably the compressor that I would say if you had a 3k limit. What I would say is if you've got a 3k limit, if we can just do away with the 3k limit, and if you've got 3k to spend on a compressor, save another grand and get yourself something like an SPL Iron, because that's a really, really good mastering compressor for 4k. And that would be the one that I would recommend if we were to just push beyond that 3k limit and go to 4k. But if we had to be at 3k, I think the Better Maker compressor would be the one to go with. Yeah, I mean, I you know, these things where I've got a limit, the problem is because I personally, I don't have that limit where we buy what's the best product to get the best mastering result. I don't have that 3k limit, so it's very difficult for me to say get this one when in reality you want to get an alpha compressor. But you know, I understand these questions, and it's because people, which believe me, you don't want to be buying an alpha compressor if you're not doing mastering day in, day out, because it's not, you know, it's ridiculously expensive, albeit for a very, 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 very good compressor. But if you're a producer for something like that, it's overkill, massively overkill. So yeah, I guess the number one would be the SSL Fusion. That's every time that is the one to get. And if we were to talk about a 3k EQ, I'd say the Handcrafted Labs Thermos version 3. I think maybe they're onto version 4 now. I've got the version 3, which is very good. And then if we had to stick below 3k, I would say the Better Maker compressor, just because it gives you a lot of versatility. It gives you a lot to work with. It's not just a compressor that's just all it's going to do is just compress. There's a lot more involved in that, because we have the back end of it with the plug-in control and everything like that. There's a lot more you can do with that. So yeah, they're my three. That's the three that I would go to if my hands were tied at a 3k limit.